Hello and welcome to Projector, and on this episode, beware whose friend request you accept. Laura, played by Alycia Debnam-Carey, is a popular college student, and when a reclusive new student in a psychology class named Marina, played by Lisa Lear, sends a friend request, Laura accepts it. When Laura unfriends Marina over her obsessive behaviour, Marina commits suicide, the video of which is posted onto the internet. Shortly after, Laura finds her social media profile has been hijacked by Marina's vengeful spirit, who wants to make her lose all her friends and killing those closest to her so that she knows how loneliness feels. In the last couple of years, we've had an explosion of internet-based horror films, and this seems to have coincided with the decline of found footage movies, so now that seems to have moved on to social media instead, where you have things like live streams and Skype calls, and generally anything that uses a webcam, so you can have it almost like a continuous take, almost occurring in real time. I mean, internet-based horror movies are nothing new. You can trace that all the way back to direct-to-video direct, like The Mangler 2 from 15 years ago if you really wanted to, and horror films based around computers go back even further than that. But I think last year's Unfriended, which was set entirely within a Skype call, really seems to have captured a lot of people's imagination. Although, again, that was nothing new because one of the VHS movies had a short in it that was also set entirely within a Skype call. Now, Friend Request is actually a German production shot in the English language that was filmed around the same time as Unfriended, but was delayed for some time, of course, because Unfriended came out and they wanted to avoid the competition. Funnily enough, in its native Germany, where it came out a few months ago, it was actually called Unfriend because Unfriended went by a different title there, but for the English language release, they've called it Friend Request instead. The opening act of Friend Request is its strongest part because it's the one that's most rooted in reality. A lot of these internet-based horror films use our fears of the internet and internet obsession and online harassment to give them some sort of social legitimacy and commentary that adds some background to the scares. And Friend Request seems like it's going to try and address some of these themes, especially in regards to internet obsession. It seems like that's going to be the main crux of the movie because they keep talking about it throughout. But when I say that this is the strongest part of the movie, it's still really unconvincing because our main character, Laura, one of the earliest details that we pick up about her is that she has 800 friends on her not Facebook page. 800! If you have 800 people on your not Facebook page, stop accepting every friend request you get. If you have 800 people, you need a cull. Seriously. You know, maybe being attacked by a ghost isn't exactly a bad thing for you. So we get this relationship between Laura and this mysterious new student, Marina, who's this very gothic girl, very reclusive and socially awkward, and Laura takes pity on her and has some compassion to some extent. She accepts her friend request, and in another detail that doesn't make a lot of sense, and these build up throughout, by the way, it turns out that Marina has no friends on her Facebook account. And it's not like she hasn't had a page, because it turns out her page has a history. It's filled with these looping GIF animations going through mirrors, which turn out to be a major clue for the rest of the movie, as are a lot of the things posted on her page are all foreshadowing for later in the movie. But if she had no friends before this point, who was she posting these for? Was she posting these for the benefit of the audience? Apparently so. And speaking of Marina, the movie wants us to feel in some way sorry for her, but she's always portrayed as this obsessive, creepy, unsettling stalker that it's hard to feel empathetic towards her. She's never really given a chance to be a human being. She's always portrayed as this grossly exaggerated caricature of this gothic loner character that even in the earliest stages of the movie it doesn't even seem remotely plausible. And the more that we learn about this character, the less sense it makes. And I was really hoping in the film's earliest stages that this idea of internet obsession would drive the rest of the narrative and it would do something clever with it. Of course, the movie takes a severe right turn at that point into absolute nonsense, because the scene after Marina's suicide, Laura is taken to the cops, who ask her about her role in the situation, and then ask her, "Do you know where the body is? Because we haven't found it yet." What? What? How did you declare a suicide when there is no body? All you have is at best a missing person. Or literally all you have is a video that was posted on the internet of her hanging herself above an open flame, which brings up the obvious question: if she killed herself making it, who posted it? Of course, the obvious answer is internet ghost. But the police don't know that. That's not exactly an obvious conclusion to come to. But here's the deal with friend request. Despite the fact that it has a Facebook setup, that's not really the crux of the narrative. Unlike Unfriended, which was set entirely within Skype and used social media extensively, friend request is a traditional narrative, and honestly, if you took the internet portion of it out, it could just be any horror movie. Literally. After the first act, this whole internet obsession theme they've built up throughout it is just completely discarded. It's an utter waste of that idea, unfortunately. And instead, it turns into an almost investigative horror movie, something akin to an internet-based version of The Ring, or to some extent Pulse. It's not particularly interesting, because we have seen this kind of movie done time and time again, and nothing about it feels very connected to the internet, and when it does, it feels silly. You only have to look at a scene where Laura is talking with her friend who's looking at the code of the various not Facebook pages, and Laura's page is in traditional code. Marina's, however, is coded in the supernatural. I'm not kidding, this is a scene that happens in the movie. There is a scene where they're looking at code and it's all in this alien language, these weird symbols that I'm pretty sure I've seen on the back of children's cereal boxes and used for puzzles. And again, the movie keeps using these as a running motif. It's just silly and daft, especially when the internet can be a legitimately scary place. There are dark alleys, metaphorically, on the internet. And this idea that your page can be hijacked is not an unrealistic one. But friend request seems designed for people whose idea of horror is that, gasp, they have to delete their profile page. They're not in control of the things they're posting. You have a ticking clock in the worst possible way. Throughout the entire film, there is a ticking clock, essentially, of Laura's friend count appearing next to her head, ticking down from 800 to 400 and then 300, and you get the idea. Oh no, we have to stop it before it gets to 0, because bad things will happen, I guess, if she has no friends, because apparently no one understands that maybe her page has been hijacked or actually tries to contact her outside of Facebook. And the one thing I can say about Simon Verhoeven's direction, he's good at building up the tension in the kill sequences. The kill sequences by themselves do build up a sense of creepy atmosphere. The issue with Friend Request, however, is that it is loaded with jump scares. One of the earliest scenes in the movie is Laura watching a kitten video, because of course any movie about the internet wouldn't be complete without a cat video of some kind, and it turns into a screamer. And that sets the tone pretty much for the entire rest of the film, because every bit of it is jump scare, jump scare, jump scare, jump scare. There are no legitimately scary moments in this movie. It is all sudden, abrupt movements with loud soundtrack noises instead. But the big thing with this movie is this idea of black mirrors related to witchcraft, although if you ask me, it seems like Simon Verhoeven, who was also one of the writers on this movie, has actually been watching a lot of Charlie Brooker's Black Mirror when he came up with this screenplay. In fact, they even acknowledged this briefly, because when someone enters Black Mirror into a search engine, one of the predicted results is Black Mirror Season 3. Hardy ha ha. This Black Mirror idea, I suppose you could use as the basis for Vanity, especially with the whole internet obsession idea. Of course, that isn't what it's used for. It's used for the common horror movie trope of something evil being reflected back in the mirror, or in some cases, simply uses a psych out. In one of the earliest instances, Laura walks up to a mirror and we expect something to happen in the mirror, and then it cuts to a reverse angle and we see that the ghost is behind her, which she doesn't acknowledge. Or anyone else for that matter. No one sees this ghost but us. So it's a completely pointless scare. But this Black Mirror idea is basically used as a way of doing these weird dreamscapes in the kill scenes where the lights go out and suddenly places are completely abandoned, even crowded places like hospitals, for example. And all I was thinking through this was, this is very Elm Street-y. This idea of people losing control and being possessed and not realising their surroundings. It's all very much from the Elm Street playbook. And that's the problem with friend requests especially, is that it just feels like a compendium of a lot of scares from other different movies that don't make a lot of sense in context. And to be honest, I didn't really care about any of the characters, apart from Laura. To her credit, Alycia Debnam-Carey, who's best known for her TV work on The 100 and Fear the Walking Dead, I cared about her protagonist because in the earlier acts of the film, she wasn't this terrible person. She was sympathetic towards Maureen and was unsettled when her generosity was essentially taken advantage of and she became threatening. So she is a likeable character. The problem is everyone else in this movie is utterly obnoxious. We don't care about them, and to make it worse, the dialogue in this movie is horrendous. Utterly horrendous. We are talking lines like, "Unfriend that dead bitch." I wish I was making lines like that up. But the worst dialogue in the movie comes from the detective characters, because one of them is Captain Exposition, who has to deliver some of the silliest bits of information in the film, but the other one is bloody Chuckles here, the comic relief, who, after we've seen people die, has to deliver supposedly humorous questions to Laura as punchlines to the end of these scenes, like, "Do you know where the body is? 'Cause we don't know where it burned. Do you have any new drugs you kids are taking lately?" It's like he's come out of a Broken Lizard movie. It's about as jarring as those cops from the original Last House on the Left. There is no reason for this character to be in the movie. He just annoys throughout the entire time. Look, one of the worst scenes in the movie happens with this character, and something happens regarding him, and the other detective sees the aftermath of the events and simply says, "Really?" That was exactly what I was thinking at that precise moment, because "really," incredulously, sums up the entire scenario that just happened. It is ridiculous. By the time the final act rolls around, the silliness has piled up and piled up and piled up that it's almost impossible to take anything seriously at this point. So through some absurd, protracted, contrived logic, we've ended up in this abandoned factory. And all I was thinking at this precise moment was, this abandoned factory reminds me of the one in Texas Chainsaw 3D. This is the worst horror film I've sat through in a cinema since Texas Chainsaw 3D. And that is somewhat surprising because its later movements are surprisingly bleak, which may detract somewhat from the so bad it's good status that the film does have potential towards in its more laughable moments. If you're a connoisseur of bad horror cinema, I would suggest checking this one out for that reason, but otherwise, I wouldn't suggest this to anyone who actually wants a good, scary time. And I know this is aimed towards teens, but I don't think there's anything here that will stop the most online-obsessed, texting-happy tween from doing their next status update, especially since the movie perhaps inadvertently promotes the message that having the most social media friends is the route to happiness or importance. Frankly, there's more scary things probably posted on your Facebook feed than there is in this movie. Friend Request is one of the dopiest horror movies I've seen in quite some time. It starts out vaguely addressing fears of internet addiction and online harassment, but quickly gives way to a generic horror flick with silly plotting and giant holes that could literally be about anything without even the gimmick of Unfriended to set it apart. There are absolutely no genuine scares apart from constant jump moments, and unless your idea of pure terror is having to delete your Facebook page, you'll likely find this more laughable than terrifying with each new revelation, waiting for the obnoxious cast to be thinned out. Horror fans can safely decline this request. Coming up soon, there's civil war in the Marvel Universe, while Idris Elba fights terrorists in Bastille Day. But until then, I'm Matthew Buck, fading out.